Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of On the Beaten Track. I'm your host, Rihanna. It is barreling on to mid-Ramadan at the point that I'm recording this. So the mouth, she is super dry. The brain is mush. But I think that maybe I don't remember because I was young when Ramadan was in summer. I mean, this is not the height of summer. So this year, I've just been so tired. And I saw somebody else say that. I was like, oh, I'm not the only one. I've been so tired. And at night, it feels like I'm rushing from breaking my fast to having food. I'm not giving myself the time to really let things settle because I'm not hungry. For the last couple of days, I've really started feeling hungry post my sip. But yeah, it's been strange. It's always so good to break your routine, to center yourself. I do not particularly like how obliterated I am close to the afternoon or at night for my family because I'm the only one fasting. So I wish I could change that, but I am very grateful that they are understanding. Although my daughter did say the other day, Mommy, just get the word out. I was like, I don't know, my brain is mush. By the time you guys see this, Dan would be far gone. I always love this time of year, as hard as it is. And no, it doesn't get easier. No, we can't have water. Yes, it shifts every year. This year it's 14 hours. So yeah, just general questions I get every year without fail. Which speaks to what I was saying is that people generally don't know each other. I'm always surprised when I get it from a non-white person, the questions. I'm like, we were integrated. What you talking about? You've got every colored person that I know. He's got a cousin or a friend or somebody that's Muslim. So you are exposed to it at some point in the colored community. So when people don't know, I am confusion. Now that we've gone past that, hopefully everybody has had an amazing Ramadan and Eid. By the time you watch this, we are today just looking at more of the fallout or what the government did or the consequence of what happened post June 16th, 1976. We start with the death, another death of a young man who lay dead on the floor of a police cell in Johannesburg. Officials said it was suicide. Those who knew him said it was impossible. His name was Mapetla Mohapi, student leader, organizer, intellectual, and one of the most important figures behind the Black Consciousness student movement during the era of the Soweto uprising. His death just weeks after the uprising began sent shockwaves through activist networks and deepened suspicion of the apartheid state's methods. Mapetla was born in 1948 in Soweto, in Orlando, Soweto, a township already simmering with political awareness and frustration. He grew up in a community shaped by forced removals, economic hardship, and relentless policing. Education was both a pathway forward and a tool of control. Unlike many who would later become public figures, Mohapi's leadership style was quiet but intense. He was known as thoughtful, disciplined, and deeply committed to collective struggle rather than personal prominence. Mohapi rose to prominence through the South African Students' Organization, SASO, one of the central vehicles of the Black consciousness ideology. Black consciousness associated with figures like Steve Biko emphasized psychological liberation, the idea that political freedom required first rejecting internalized inferiority imposed by apartheid. For students, this message was electrifying. Mohapi became an organizer, a strategist, a bridge between student networks, and a mentor to younger activists. He eventually served as secretary of SASO, placing him at the heart of student mobilization across the country. By the mid-1970s, student activism had evolved into a sophisticated network of committees, meetings, and political education sessions. Mohapi was instrumental in coordinating communication between schools, encouraging disciplined protests, promoting non-racial solidarity among oppressed communities, and preparing students to resist without descending into chaos. He understood that spontaneous anger alone could not sustain a movement. Organization was essential. Many who later marched in 1976 had been influenced directly or indirectly by SASO's structures that he helped build. When students rose on the 16th of June 1976, try again. Mohapi was not a child in uniform, but an experienced organizer, observing events unfold with both pride and alarm. The uprising confirmed that the youth were ready to challenge the state openly. It also triggered a mass crackdown. Police targeted known activists first, particularly those linked to Black consciousness organizations, which the government considered especially dangerous. Mohapi was arrested in July 1976. He was detained under laws allowing imprisonment without trial. Mohapi was held at John Foster Square, the notorious headquarters of the security branch in Johannesburg. Detainees taken there often emerged traumatized, if they emerged at all. Interrogation techniques included sleep deprivation, physical assault, psychological pressure, isolation, and threats against family. The goal was not simple information but submission. For politically committed activists, resistance inside detention became another form of struggle. Police announced that Mohapi had been found dead in his cell. The explanation, suicide by hanging. But inconsistencies quickly emerged. Detainees frequently died under unexplained circumstances, and official explanations often conflicted with physical evidence. Fellow detainees reported hearing disturbances. Observers questioned whether he had the means or opportunity to hang himself. Family members outright rejected the claim. To them, Mohapi was not a man who would abandon the struggle voluntarily. His death joined a growing list of suspicious fatalities in detention, cases where the state controlled the narrative and evidence. His funeral drew large crowds and heavy police presence, itself a form of political demonstration. Mohapi's death had immediate political consequences. It confirmed what many activists had long suspected. Detention could be a death sentence. For students and organizers, the message was chilling but galvanizing. Fear did not end resistance, it hardened it. The uprising intensified. International attention grew. The legitimacy of the apartheid state eroded further. Within Black consciousness movements, Mohapi became a martyr, a symbol of the risks faced by those who dared to organize openly. Mapetla Mohapi's significance lies not in a single speech or dramatic event, but in the infrastructure of resistance he helped create. Movements require visionaries, those who articulate the goals, the organizers, those who build structures, and the participants, those who carry them forward. Mohapi was an organizer. Without figures like him, spontaneous protests really becomes sustained political force. He was only 28 years old when he died. He never saw the spread of the uprising across the country, the rise of mass resistance in the 1980s, the release of political prisoners, the end of apartheid, and democratic elections. Yet his work contributed directly to those outcomes. Many deaths in detention remained unsolved. Truth was obscured by secrecy, destroyed records, and the passage of time. But memory persists. Mohapi's name survives in archives, memorials, and the testimonies of those who worked beside him. His story reminds us that revolutions are built not only by those visible in photographs, but by those organizing behind the scenes, often at the greatest personal risk. Mapetla Mohapi did not die on a battlefield. He died alone in custody, under a system that feared ideas carried by young people. Thank you so much for what you did, and I hope he's remembered for what he built and not how he died. The next event was massive, in my opinion. On the morning of the 19th of October 1977, Africa woke to silence. Newsstands stood half empty. Radio reports were cautious, clipped, evasive. Phones rang in newsrooms that no longer legally existed. Overnight, the apartheid government had banned organizations, detained activists, and shut down newspapers in one of the most sweeping crackdowns in the country's history. The day became known as Black Wednesday. It was not the sound of gunfire that marked it. It was the sudden absence of voices. After the 16th of June uprising spread nationwide, the state responded with arrests, surveillance, and force, as they do. But unrest did not disappear. Instead, resistance reorganized. Community groups formed, student networks re-emerged, church leaders spoke out, and journalists exposed abuses. International condemnation intensified, and sanction discussions gained momentum. The apartheid government concluded that repression had to move beyond reactive policing. It needed preemptive control. At the center of the government's concern was the black press. So I'm going to attempt to click with a very dry mouth. So wish me luck. I'm going to try and get close to them. The newspaper The World, edited by Percy Qoboza, had become the most influential black publication in the country. It reported on township conditions, police actions, and political developments with a frankness rarely seen in mainstream white media. Why would they? Circulation reached hundreds of thousands. For many Black South Africans, the world was more than a newspaper. It was a mirror. It reflected their reality back to them unfiltered. Once described the paper's mission as simply telling the truth about life under apartheid. To the government, that truth was destabilizing. Behind closed doors, security officials compiled lists, as they do. Organizations to be banned, leaders to be detained, and publications to be silenced. Legal mechanisms already existed. Under apartheid law, the Minister of Justice could ban groups and individuals without trial, restricting movement, speech, and association. The state did not need to prove wrongdoing in court. Suspicion was sufficient. Early on the morning of the 19th of October 1977, police fanned out across the country. Offices were raided, documents were seized, and activists detained. By midday, the government announced sweeping measures. 18 organizations had been banned, numerous activists restricted or detained, and publications suppressed or closed. Among those targeted were community organizations, student bodies, and advocacy groups seen as sympathetic to anti-apartheid causes. I wonder why. There was no court proceedings, no public hearings, no appeals, just administrative decree backed by force. Perhaps the most symbolic act of the day was the banning of the World newspaper. Its offices were shut down, its printing halted, its journalists suddenly unemployed and under suspicion. Its editor, Percy himself, was detained. For readers, the disappearance was immediate. A daily source of information vanished overnight. Silence replaced headlines. Even segments of the white press, which often operated under constraints but still enjoyed greater freedom, expressed alarm. The English language ran Daily Mail condemned the crackdown as an assault on fundamental liberties. Some journalists warned that suppressing moderate voices would radicalize opposition. Censorship rarely eliminates dissent. It just removes the safety valves. International reactions were swift. Government, churches, and civil society groups condemned the action. At the United Nations, calls for stronger sanctions grew louder. Anti-apartheid movements broad gained momentum. Black Wednesday did not isolate South Africa from criticism. It amplified it. For individuals targeted by banning orders, daily life became a form of imprisonment outside prison walls. Restrictions would include curfews, prohibition on attended gatherings, limits on communication, and house arrest conditions. Some activists could not speak publicly, publish writings, or even meet more than one person at a time. Isolation was the goal. Break networks, break morale, break influence. In the short term, the crackdown succeeded in disrupting visible organization. Meetings ceased, offices closed, and leaders disappeared from public life. But repression produced unintended consequences. Resistance moved underground. Youth radicalization deepened, and trust in reform diminished. If moderate voices were silenced, more militant ones would fill the vacuum. Historians often view Black Wednesday as a pivot between two phases of apartheid, from containment to total control, from reactive policing to proactive suppression, from visible opposition to clandestine struggle. Within a few years, mass mobilization would re-emerge stronger and broader. Black Wednesday did not produce dramatic images of crowds or clashes. Its power lay in silence. Newspapers that did not publish, leaders who did not appear, and voices that could not be heard. But silence can be deceptive. Beneath it, anger deepens, network organize, memory hardens, and history continues to move even when no one is allowed to report it. The government had silenced the public square, but it had not silenced the country. Now I want to look at Percy Qoboza. Percy was one of the most influential Black journalists in South African history. Born in Johannesburg, he came of age under tightening apartheid laws. Like many Black South Africans, his educational opportunities were limited, but he developed strong writing skills and political awareness early. He entered journalism when the profession was heavily segregated. White journalists dominated major newspapers. Black reporters were often relegated to township issues or confined to township issues, and editorial control rested largely in white-owned companies. Imagine being a Black journalist in South Africa during apartheid. Brutal. His publications reached an audience that mainstream papers rarely touched. Ngobosa became the editor of the world's most widely read Black newspaper. Its readership extended across townships nationwide. For many people, for many families, it was the only publication that spoke directly to their reality. Unlike mainstream newspapers, the world reported on police brutality, forced removals, poverty and unemployment, educational crisis, political arrests, and community voices. It did not pretend neutrality in the face of injustice. It documented lived experience. Circulation soared into the hundreds of thousands. In a country where most Black citizens had no political representation, the paper functioned as a public forum. During the Soweto uprising, the world became essential reading. It reported eyewitness accounts, casualty figures, funeral coverage, government suppression, and voices of students and parents. Many readers trusted it more than official statements. Of course, I would. If the uprising was the spark, the Black press was the amplifier. It ensured that events in Soweto was not isolated or forgotten. Ngobosa wrote that with clarity rather than rhetorical flourish. rather than. He argued that apartheid was not only morally wrong, but politically unsustainable. In one widely cited reflection, he warned that suppressing peaceful protest would produce more radical resistance. His approach was neither sensationalist or submissive. It was factual and therefore dangerous. On that Wednesday, Black Wednesday, the government banned the world and detained Ngobosa without trial. The state did not accuse him of publishing falsehoods. It accused him of influence, because they understood. After his release, he continued writing, though under severe constraints. He later edited successor publications, including City Press, which attempted to fill the vacuum left by the banning of the world. Despite surveillance and pressure, he remained committed to journalism as a form of accountability. He died in 1988, just 6 years before the end of apartheid, too early to witness the democratic era he had helped make possible. Authoritarian systems depend on controlling the narrative. We can see that currently. The black press disrupted that control. It did 3 critical things. 1. It connected communities. Events in one township became known nationwide. Isolation as a tool of apartheid weakened. It validated experience. Readers saw their struggles acknowledged publicly. This reduced feelings of invisibility. Number 3, it preserved evidence. Journalists recorded abuses that might otherwise have been denied or forgotten. Operating under censorship laws meant constant danger. Journalists faced arrests, banning orders, harassment, confiscation of material, and professional blacklisting. Some stories could not be published at all. Others were reported indirectly or cautiously. Every issue printed was an act of negotiation between truth and survival. Today, Percy Qoboza is remembered as a pioneer of courageous journalism. His work helped ensure that the voices of township residents were heard both nationally and internationally. The black press demonstrated that information in itself can be a form of resistance. Without those newspapers, the events of the 1970s and the 1980s would be far less documented. I mean, we've covered so much today. We've covered Mohapi's murder, because that man did not commit suicide. No. It was so significant because it was somebody that was an organizer. He wasn't, the voice of the organization, but they detained him and he died, was murdered. Then we look at Black Wednesday, where organizations were banned, where newspapers were shut down, and people were detained or banned or suppressed some more. And then we look at the life of Percy, who was one of our great journalists in South Africa, bringing truth and visibility. And I see you, I understand what you're going through. I'm reporting on it. So I report on it. People connect with it. Somebody sees me. I see somebody that's like me. I'm not alone. It just obliterated that isolation. So all these things did was ignite the fire even further in those individuals that were already serving as activists during that time. They became more cautious, but it just hardened their resolve to get the information out there, fight for the dignity of their people. So thank you so much for listening to me. Next week, we get to Steve Biko, which I am myself about, but hopefully I can do the legend justice and we can really look at the thought process or the person behind this wonderful and simple concept of psychologically breaking yourself from internalized inferiority built by an external party. Join me next week where we get to speak about this awesome human. Okay, again, please remember to subscribe. Please remember to comment and like. And please remember to return next week. Bye.